Hi, and welcome to the Golden Age Report. Today we're going to look at the artillery issue for the West. Then we're going to look at China readying for war. And then we're going to take a look at the EU threat. Next, we're going to take a look at the leadership meltdown happening in Kiev. And then finally, from Russia, we're going to take a look at the front lines. According to the New York Times, last summer in the Donbass region, the Ukrainians were firing 6,000 to 7,000 artillery rounds per day. The Russians were firing 40 to 50,000 rounds per day. By comparison, the United States produces only 15,000 rounds each month. We're also hearing that 20 NATO countries have run out of weapons in general. The U.S. said that they decided not to move 150,000 rounds of artillery out of South Korea after all. We think that the meeting between Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un has them a little nervous. We're glad they're just taking the moment to think ahead. The NATO chief, on the other hand, is reacting to the emptied out supply rooms. He's trying to figure out how to dust off some retired weapons factories to get them going. Once they get them up and running, that's when they'll probably start looking at how they might be able to supply them with some energy. Fake news is all excited about Russia's recommissioning of the old Soviet-era rockets to launch as decoy attacks. They're saying it's because they are running out of missiles again. Russia has no problem admitting that they are indeed doing that. We think this is just another smart move by Putin, reusing old weapons that they know they're not ever going to need, causing the West to burn through valuable and expensive air defense weapons. Seems like a smart move. We just don't see the connection to them running out. It's just not there. Obviously, if it comes down to them needing nukes, they are not going to rely on these old relics to do the trick. Unlike the West, they are displaying good resource management. As we can see, Russia is by far the sole superpower in this area of artillery, tops both in self-propelled and towed artillery by a whopping margin in both areas. Artillery has been one of the biggest factors in this war. China and South Korea are next on this list and mark the only two world powers. The next group, that includes the US and Ukraine, we consider to be regional powers in this metric. Note that all the other countries on this list we have leaning towards siding with Russia. This Kim Jong-un meeting seems quite alarming indeed. Could this mean that something is ready to kick off in the region, either with Taiwan or South Korea, or possibly both? Certainly seems that the timing might be right. All you're hearing from the West is that they have this weapon shortage. China is showing off the upgraded drones with the newly added dogfighting ability. At the same time, they're showing off their brand new anti-drone vehicle. Meanwhile, the US is promising a cheap vampire drone killer by 2023. I'm thinking that there's likely a 50-50 chance that things will be settled by then. China continues to taunt the West with their world's top production rate. On another topic, Xi Jinping is stepping up the lockdowns again. Is he a bit paranoid about what Russia's been telling them about the biolabs they found? It'll be nice when things settle down a bit so he can make it out to visit the Crown Prince and chat about the Mao Paradise Project. So it seems like we have some serious escalation going on here. First, we have a hammer show up at the Pelosi household following the whole Taiwan stunt. Now it seems we've gotten much more serious here as the Wagner group sent a bloody hammer to Europe. It seems like they're not liking the EU rallying over declaring Russia a terrorist organization. While the US seems to be gaining some level of consciousness, most of the EU member states continue their zombie-like mindset. They didn't double, triple down, or even quadruple down on their backfiring sanction strategy. They're taking this to the 9th and final inning. I haven't investigated the details of this yet, but I'm thinking they're going to include sanctions and possible imprisonment for any involvement manufacturing, transporting, or possessing any kind of mallet-shaped object. They didn't stop there, though. They just now happen to notice the US military-industrial complex issue. It took 20 years to figure that one out. Bad timing, though, called them out on that now. It seems like they're the only hope they have to get out of this mess they got themselves into with Russia. I used to kind of think it was the craziest thing, them being worried about defending themselves against an aggressive Russia. But I'm going to admit when I'm wrong here. I really didn't see the EU getting exponentially more aggressive as their weapon stockpile depleted. Although there's probably no going back for Zelensky and his crew, they could probably still at least try to get some peace drawn up here. Meanwhile, we are hearing that Zelensky has his own plan to deal with this artillery disaster in Kherson. Apparently, he's calling out Putin for being a coward. He's trying to shame him into coming out and fighting with just guns, instead of hiding behind all his artillery, missiles, rockets, and bombs. Something tells me that Putin's just going to blow him off and continue to fight the unfair fight. Speaking of Zelensky, I was going to give him a rest today, but he's killing us by generating all this insane news. I'm thinking they better get him a teleprompter quick, before it's too late. Maybe Biden can lend his for a little while, just long enough to give our channel a breather. We've got a bunch of other important topics, but he just keeps grabbing all the headlines. I mean, Biden's teleprompter has done a great job so far in keeping him in office. Besides, Putin needs to keep him in power a little longer, so they really need to do something quick to help out Zelensky. Zelensky. The thing with him blaming his mayor for the situation in Kiev, I mean, really? Does he expect him to negotiate the peace talks? Is it the missiles that hit the city? Is there more to this story that we don't know? Was the Russian story true that they didn't launch the latest missiles on Kiev? Was it the mayor or one of his guys misfiring the air defense? We're going to have to continue to meditate on this one. The pieces to this puzzle that are continuing to drip out are just plain weird. On the other front, General Armageddon got one of his guys looking into a defense for this barbaric Mad Max warfare. Perhaps he had some books from the Roman Empire era sent out from the motherland. I suppose they didn't have any history books anywhere near the front lines. Pretty sure they all went up in flames back in 2014 during the big book burn. Putin said they got to get something figured out quickly because they had to send for another wave of prisoners. He doesn't know when they'll be ready. There's a couple of noteworthy things coming out of the Russian Ministry of Defense report that they give pretty much daily. One of the things we're noticing is that the increase in percentage of mercenaries versus Ukrainian servicemen being killed. Looks like that number is continuing to escalate. We had reports of a couple hundred Polish volunteers being killed the other night, and then it looks like there was 100 mercenaries. Looks like there was 100 mercenaries last night, and then 100 the night before. The other item that really stood out is this one report on what it looks like they hit the jackpot on a weapons depot. The report says aviation, missile troops, and artillery struck 6 enemy command centers, as well as 62 artillery units at firing positions, manpower, military equipment in 137 areas. And then it talks about an ammo depot which stored 100 HIMARS rockets and over 7,000 foreign-made large-caliber artillery rounds, 4 missiles, and artillery ammunition depots. Sounds like the Ukrainians that were slowed up by the power outages have made it to the front lines in extremely large number and are going to make an attempt at both the DPR and LPR regions. Russia has released what looks like its heaviest artillery attacks on the front lines that we've seen so far. At least this is what the maps look to indicate. On another front, we continue to hear that Zuckerberg and Meta have been deemed a terrorist organization by Putin. This is for allowing and perhaps deploying a special algorithm push hate against the Russian people. We don't know if this report is true, but we are seeing it all over the place over and over. We have our fingers crossed. We did promise that we were going to continue to hear of the Zuck's continued downfall. It seems that Zuck has been able to get away with so much malice for so long, finally catching up to him. Thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and pound that like button. There's going to be a lot more coming. We're just getting started.